Welcome to the Oh So Spurs Tactical Special. If you are new to this show, stop a second. Welcome. Just to explain, we are the Thinking Fans podcast of Tottenham. You won't get shouty blokes here yelling over each other over dumbfounded opinions. This is a show of calm, relaxation, and logic. So welcome if you're new, and stay tuned, because I am joined by a licensed coach, JJ. How are you, JJ?
Hey Jim, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. The sun is shining, and we have a huge game afoot in the Europa League. But today we're here to discuss a question that's come in a lot, and that is, why are Tottenham starting slow? And this is a perception that's going around at the moment, I think, particularly based after our last two games. And you've been doing some research behind the scenes to try shed some light on it, haven't you? Where would you like to start, JJ? I've got your screen grabs from certain games, or did you want to start with some statistics?
Let's go with the stats to start off with. So I've got to be honest that when this question came through, I had to think about it, and I didn't, in my own mind, I didn't think of Spurs as a slow starting team. And then I kind of was thinking about it and thinking, oh, okay, yeah, no, maybe that's right. So I had a quick look at the stats. And this is the point where people watching this who love stats and want to look into it can come back on it. But it does appear that Tottenham actually do the bulk of their work in the first half. So if we're looking at the Premier League and we're looking at the 24th season, it appears statistically that we massively outscore ourselves. We score more in the first half than we do in the second half. Now, there's lots of ways you can kind of chop that up in terms of games where we haven't scored, games where, the Brighton game comes to mind where we were strong in the first and then capitulated in the second. So there's lots of reasons that might be happening. But if those stats are right, then it does say that we are a front-running team. We're a strong-running team, and that's arguably in line with what Ange Postecoglou's football is like. But my reading of it is that he's going to be wanting us to do that for 100 plus minutes, and we might just not be there yet. So we are a good when we get off to a strong start and we score first, and then the evolution of this Tottenham team is going to be then taking that on and being able to do it for a whole game.
So it feels like, even though it may look to the eye test that we've been getting hemmed in the first halves, just trying to survive, and then bagging a kind of comeback in the second half, statistically, actually, Spurs do very well in the first half overall, despite what the eye test may show. Because the eye test says in the second half, we actually typically seem to dominate teams and don't seem to get, we seem to cut, in my head, we're always coming back from behind and we're getting results over line. But the numbers show we score first, but often concede in the second half. Is that right? It was 93% of goals, you said, or something?
Yeah, I mean, the stats, and people, please do jump on and fire these back, because it's really interesting and I wasn't expecting it. But on soccer stats, it's saying that 93% of goals are being scored in the first half, which sounds extraordinarily high to both of us when we were having a chat before this. What I would say is that obviously when you think on the eye test, when you think about games, the painful ones stick with you. And there is a lot of evidence for Tottenham conceding early goals and putting ourselves under a huge amount of pressure. So if we were to look back over a few games, particularly recently and particularly during the injury crisis kind of period, we'd be thinking about the Aston Villa Cup game in the FA Cup, conceding very, very early on. The Ipswich game, which I think we can see the slides for. And also, the Ipswich game we didn't, did we, Jim? That wasn't the one we conceded super early. It was Aston Villa. Brentford. So this was a little while ago. If people remember back to the Brentford home game, we conceded in the first, I think, ridiculous 25 seconds, a lovely Mbumo goal. And then we came back and we had a very strong performance off the back of that. And again, it's one of those things that they really stick with you. Games where we're conceding within the first couple of minutes, they give you that impression that this is who Tottenham are and this is the way that Tottenham do things. I would say that Tottenham's results have been so up and down this season, so inconsistent. And, I think anybody that looks at statistics would have said earlier in the season, our metrics were looking pretty good, but our performances and our points tallies were not matching up to the metrics. And I think that's right. I think we've been so inconsistent that I'm not sure we are a slow starting team, but by the same token, I'm not sure that it's even. I think we're all over the place. I think there are games where we come into it, we hit the ground running, we put it together nice and early, And then there are other games where we come into it, shoot ourselves in the foot. The other team scored within a minute. And then there are other games that play out in a different way. Actually, having reflected on it a little bit, I just think it sticks with that inconsistency thing. I don't think we've really found our rhythm and our way in terms of managing the tempo of a game. And that's kind of my takeaway when I was looking at this.
Interesting, yeah, because it just feels like even that we may not concede the goals against the likes of Ipswich, those first 10 minutes, we just so struggled to get the ball out the back and play out the back effectively. But it seems to be something that seems to improve after 15 minutes or so. And I don't know if you had any theories as to why suddenly we might find a way of, in recent games, what might be causing a pattern like that. It just, or is it the opposition? We often look at inwards so much and you forget to look outwardly, and maybe these other teams say, hey, typically if you go ahead first against Spurs, you'll win the game. So let's put them under immense pressure early doors. They're deep in injuries. They can't change the squad up at half time. Let's just put it to bed early. And maybe that's just the strategy. It could just be we need to credit the opposition with their tactics against us. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So when I was looking at some of the games that we've done really well, particularly some of the big results where we were getting, 4-0 against Everton and beating Man U away 3-0. And, some of these really big results, we got off to fantastic starts. What was it? Sorry, guys. I think it was Maddison scoring in the first minute against Southampton away from home. We had Brennan Johnson getting the opener at Old Trafford within the first kind of 12, 13 minutes. All of these imply that teams are very aware that if Tottenham get away to a strong start, it leads to strong outcomes for us. Now, I'm pretty sure that just about every football team in the world has an instruction to go out there and play from the opening whistle, go out there and give it. But from a tactical basis, there will be teams that are not going to come flying at you. They're going to come, they're going to sit, they're going to be super organized. So the idea of playing from the first whistle is coming out and being really, really switched on and everybody being in their spaces, but it doesn't mean running at 100 miles an hour because that's not the way they're set up for it. So there will be teams that come out to do that and will allow you the possession. And it might well be that opposition, as you say, are identifying, do not let Tottenham get away to an early start and do not let them get any rhythm or a foothold. Now, we definitely know that teams want to stop Tottenham's rhythm. Yeah, nobody wants us to get into tempo. Even really, really good teams. We see Arsenal coming to us earlier in the season where they had maybe one or two injuries and they were delaying everything and long restarts. That's all about cutting down on our rhythm and not letting us get into a space where we can really get our passing going. So I think that might be a strong indication of how teams are coming to play, whether they're going to fly at us in a high press, which Arsenal did to us in the return fixture, or if they're going to come and sit in. I'm remembering the Crystal Palace away where we lost one, just being super well organised and not giving us the spaces to play and trying to break down our rhythm.
And yeah, that is a good point. So we maybe need to credit the opposition a bit more with these things. And what do you think we need to do? Can we counter this? Do we have to just be more confident playing out the back under pressure? And does that just come with absorbing that pressure and going through those moments more and more? Or is there other things we could potentially do, like change it? Should we just start hitting it out long more often from the back to avoid this pressure?
Yeah, it's a really good point. So it obviously depends where you are at the time. So in the early phase of the game, where you're going to find yourself, and it kind of transitions into another question that I think that some of your members had, which is about our restarts and whether that's restart from a dead ball or restarts from the centre circle. So either beginning of a game or post goal, and us knocking it back. So it depends where you are. We definitely, and I've said this before, we need to get better and more accurate and more precise and playing out from the keeper. If we're going to invite pressure, if we're going to draw teams onto us to open up spaces in behind, we've got to be absolutely spot on with our timing, our movement, and the passing that then goes into it. Those are the three major areas that go into being a successful team at playing out for the back. You've also got to be really good at identifying if the opposition has given you an avenue that they weren't planning to. So if you see a gap or if you see a space, you've then got to have that positivity and the ability to kind of make something of it, which is, it's a bravery issue as much as it is a technical issue. So we've definitely got to do that if we're drawing a team onto us. But if we kind of move on to the second question about our restarts, it's been really interesting to see that in quite a lot of the games, we will from a centre, we'll roll the ball back, and then we will play a long-ish or fairly long diagonal ball. And when I was looking at it in the games that we're doing it, for me, what we've identified is we want to put the opposition into a guaranteed spot and then set off a phase of play against it, which is, it's super common. It's what teams are trying to do. They want to set up a situation that they're in control of, that they know is going to happen. And then these are the things we're going to do off the back of it. So on the flip side of that, if we're knocking it, if you remember the Ipswich game with Archie Gray knocking the ball in, that we eventually had success with Son being set away, we did it from the opening kickoff. Roll the ball back and then knock it from the right centre half, diagonally left, across the pitch, so that they're in their kind of left back area. And we're then going to send a high press after it. We've done that time and again. We've done it with Danso. Ball roll back to him. He's also playing that same diagonal ball across the pitch. And then great slide here. It shows how quickly the entire Tottenham team move up and try to, really pen Ipswich in to try and cause a turnover and then be in a high up attacking position for us to have a good opportunity at goal. The flip side of this is obviously we get it completely wrong. We didn't do it well enough. We didn't box them well enough. We were late. We weren't running the right lines. It's too easy. The ball goes across Decky and between Berival and Decky, and they get out with one very easy pass. Those are the bits that we've got to improve. We've got to do a lot better with that to really shut teams in. So for me, that restart and the reason that we're doing it is to pin an opposition in a position we know they're going to be, and then we're going to react to that and we're going to send in the high press. Again, the Aston Villa game, we got into a position, it wasn't us sending the ball forward, it was actually from them regaining possession, but we found ourselves in a position that we would arguably want to be. So we sent everybody up for that high press, but we just didn't get it right. And Villa got out far too easily. And in fact, it led to that really soft opening goal. And it was this Aston Villa game where there was a super early goal that Aston Villa scored against us as well. So these are the kind of things that we've identified why we're doing them. And therefore, if we continue to do them, can we do them higher quality and can we do them so that we're successful with it? I'd really like to see us having some success if we're going to continue to do this.
So a lot of it comes down to just practice, right? And getting better at identifying when to press. Because another topic I've had someone bring up, well, multiple bring up regularly is, Tottenham overly press. They press too hard in the wrong moments. But I think there's a perception that the team are just told wildly press whenever you can, when the reality seems to be they'll be told to aggressively press, but in certain moments to instead be a bit careful and watch their running lines and all that kind of stuff. But that comes with experience that you mentioned before, and that comes with making mistakes, and that comes with certain players being better at it than others and having better players that can execute the press. It's not quite as simple as running your heart out on the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. And what I would say to that is it's really interesting having someone like Dom Solanke who, he appears to be the Energizer Bunny. He just never stops and he presses at such high intensity. The one area that for me, I think we could do better is identifying when to press. Now, I don't mind how aggressively the press is going to go when it goes, as long as everybody's doing it. But I do feel there are times where we could better identify that this isn't the moment to go. And it's not about Solanke realizing, I've got enough in the tank, I can go right now and I can make it really difficult for them. But it's also about where are my team positioned behind me and understanding that situation. So it's not about over committing to the press. If you go, you've got to go. But it's more to do with, are my team in a position to back me up? Otherwise, I'm doing the running. But if I look around behind me, actually, no one else is in a position to effectively get there to help me out. So it's maybe not worth doing. It's maybe worth holding a bit in the tank. But there's no criticism of Solanke because not only has he got the energy, but he does it so well. The lines that he runs gives oppositions real problems. He cuts off passing lanes really well. He's really intelligent with what he does, which is fantastic to see. If we can add the rest of the team being in good positions, I think we'll be successful. I think that Chelsea game is one where maybe he went at a time that we weren't particularly set up to back him up. and then Chelsea were able to get out, and we were already doing really well in the game. So that's the kind of thing that the small margins of kind of improving those to get a better out.
Well, there you go. Tottenham don't start slow. Maybe teams have realised we start fast and we need to stop Tottenham starting fast. So that might actually be what's happening here. And there's got to be a bit of, they must recognise as well, you've got one fit centre-back in your squad and you're playing out from the back. You were playing with your, new signing goalkeeper at one point, your fourth choice goalkeeper. And we had Dragus in there as well, who was an easy target, who couldn't play out the back. So maybe the data is showing these teams, if you get at Tottenham really hard, really aggressive early on, you'll typically get chances as a result. And we've seen those chances come. But hopefully with the returns of Romero, Van der Ven, other experienced players, Solanke, we'll get better at pressing, leave ourselves less open, and also play out the back more effectively and not give away these chances. And the huge upside is when we get it right, you leave yourself in very advantageous positions, because in the reverse of when we lose the ball in the final third, they're going to lose the ball in the final third against us, and we'll be able to then push and counter. So, yeah. Well, thank you very much, JJ. Been an interesting chat. And if anyone's interested in extra videos, we do have members-only videos that drop weekly as we preview games that we won. Preview of AZ Alkmaar coming tonight as well. But up the Spurs, JJ.
Yeah, come on, Tottenham.